Do you know who Eckhart Tolle is?
I
Have you heard
do.
of him? Yeah, I guess he's a. I've seen a lot of quotes from him, but I guess he's a spiritual teacher. I saw this quote and shared it, which is life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for the evolution of your consciousness. How do you know this is the experience you need? Because this is the experience you're having at the moment. I believe that quote to be true is that nothing is happening to us. I believe that everything is happening for us. And it's difficult to be able to, like, how do you say that to, someone who's lost a child or someone who's maybe, their husband was killed in combat kind of thing. How do you say that, oh no, this is happening for you? How do you say that to someone? Because it sounds like you're trying to diminish what they're feeling or they're suffering. And that's not how I feel about it. The suffering and pain is extremely real. And it's not to say that it's anything less than what that person is experiencing, but I do believe that all of this is happening for us. Like we can't a lot of times like you can't understand it in the moment why this is happening. It feels like so much is being taken away. And I believe that to be true is a lot of times looking forward um, you can't connect the dots, but looking back a lot of times you can make sense of why certain things happened. The example that I give all the time is, well, yeah, I mean, some of these things, they change your entire trajectory, you know, and it may seem like it's the worst thing ever. Like for this kid, like his entire trajectory has potentially been changed. It may seem like the worst thing ever in the moment. The example that I give a lot is where my life was almost an entirely different trajectory was when I was already in the reserves and wanting to go active duty. Um, but have I told you that before? That I was in the reserves
I
first?
don't know. You may have.
Okay.
I knew you were. I don't think I knew the order of it.
Okay. So I was in the reserves. I came back from basic training, AIT, and I'm like, I want to go active duty right away. And the process was taking longer, than I had planned. While I was waiting to sign a contract, I met my wife and even told her, I'm like, hey, we can like hang out for a little bit, but like I'm trying to go active duty. Once I do, like this is over with. Like I'm leaving Texas. I'm like, this won't be a long-term thing. Obviously, it didn't work out that way. But when I went to Maps to sign my contract, they put a contract in front of me and it's like, hey, a total of 7 years for this contract, 5 years on active duty, and then another 2 in the guard. And I was like, okay, well, let me go make a phone call real quick. And, this is over 20 years ago. So nobody, like, there were no smartphones. People didn't have a phone glued to them like they do today. And I tried calling Becca and didn't get a hold of her. So I went back in and then signed this contract. And when I came out, after I'd signed, Becca called me back and I told her that I signed this contract, that it was going to be, a total of 7 years, that kind of deal. And she was crying and she doesn't remember saying this, but she said, I don't think I can do that. Like, as in, like, that's too long, that's too much. And I would say that would be like, like an appropriate response. I wasn't expecting that at all because from the very beginning, I was telling her I was going active duty. The very first day I met her, I was telling her, I'm just waiting to get this contract thing squared away so I can go active duty. And so it wasn't a surprise to her, but had I gotten a hold of her when the contract was first put in front of me and I was like, hang on, let me make this phone call. Had I gotten a hold of her then, I would not have signed that contract. And my life would be infinitely different than what it is right now. And so in the moment, she's upset that I've signed this contract. I'm like, oh man, this is something that like is going to go away. This relationship is going to go away. And like, but it didn't. Um, and looking back on it now, like I'm thankful that things played out the way that they did. But maybe in the moment, I was like, oh man, I wish I would have gotten a hold of her beforehand. And so, I mean, that's a very light example, but I feel that all of this is everything that happens is for our personal growth and it's for us to learn. And I don't know if we talked about this last time or another time, but the most powerful thing that I think you shared this with me is that sometimes our own suffering, we can get caught in this. Well, this is how I visualize this. I don't want to put like
All right, you're going. You're good. You're good.
your words on this, but I think in suffering we can get caught in this. Why is this happening to me? Like, this is ruining everything for me. Like, just so self-focused in our own suffering, when the reality is that this could be happening to you for someone else. Like, this suffering is not even about you, but this is for you so that you can grow and so that you can be of value to someone else. Becca sent me something maybe a month ago that is a quote that said something along the lines of like, one day you'll tell your story or write a book and it will be someone else's survival guide. And I was like, oh man, it's like, it's so nice. It's a really nice thing that she sent me. But I also think about a guy that I met who he used to be a professional golfer, and his professional golfing career was ended when like he got his arm caught in some farm equipment kind of thing and lost his arm. But he says next to his kids being born and his family, it's like the greatest thing that has ever happened to him in his life. And in the moment he had to be thinking, my professional golfing career, my way of living is like totally taken from me. Probably had to go to this place of, why is this happening to me? And this is not fair. Life's not fair. Those kinds of things. But he says it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to him. And this is what he does now. He teaches a lot of like wounded veterans to play golf. And he says when he's there teaching another amputee to play golf, and he is an amputee himself, and it's this like, hey, I can connect with you on a certain level and let you know that, yeah, we both have had things taken from us, quote unquote, but we can still, in his case, it was a gift. That was a gift for him. And I believe a lot of this to be gifts for us. It doesn't feel like that, but it allowed him to be able to connect with so many other veterans and be able to teach them to play golf and show them, hey, even if you're missing limbs, you can still do stuff. And he is an example of that. And so yeah, that was really burning me up yesterday, and I didn't say anything back about any of that, because also too, I recognize that sometimes we just need to be feeling what we're feeling, and not be told anything in the mix of it. But somebody also said to me is that, well, sometimes you need to share things, and it needs to sting a little bit for people to get it.
When you're telling this story, I had a couple, like, I have a lot of different thoughts that with this, but one of the things is, especially like with this golfer and the suffering and all these different things, stuff happens to us, and I feel like it breaks our heart. And it breaks our heart in a way that is, in that moment, it's like, why? It is a breaking of the heart, and you don't want it. Like, you don't want to accept it. You don't want to be with it or anything. And these particular moments will break your heart again, but break it in a different way when it is repurposed for something else. And it's because it's almost as if this moment or this story has this huge power behind it, and you're using it in a way that's bringing like compassion towards it, or using it to help others, but you see the greater purpose behind it. And so it's like a bittersweet heartbreak of like this was awful,
Yeah.
and it is useful, and that's hard to hold.
Yeah. The thing I like is and I learned this last fall, is that, and I felt this last night big time, is that a wide mix of emotions, and essentially we can feel multiple things at once, and that's okay. We can be happy about something in our life, but also sad at the same time, of like a loss of life. We can feel sad about that, but we may have like great things going on in our life, and it's okay to be able to feel both of those.
Right. Right. We wouldn't know what light was without darkness. We have
Yeah.
to see both. So I'm going to ask you this idea of happening to us, happening for us, and these moments that like can break your heart but are useful, like what the quote your wife sent you about this, like your
Mhm.
story is someone's survival guide. So you've given an example of one that has a happy ending with it, where it was like kind of dicey as soon as your wife told you, like, well, I don't know, if I'm gonna hang with this, but we know she's here, so it
Yeah.
worked. But is there
Well, with
one
so
of these
much.
stories that kind of I know there's always all of us have these different journeys, but is there a story that is one of these ones that was just like really, it's like when there was that bend in the road, like losing your arm and then golfing and all this sort of stuff. Is there one of these things that's like, okay, here's a big one, and it's hero making.
It's hero making.
Yeah, it's your hero's journey. It could break you, or you can grow from it.
This kind of reminds me of like going through the VA not long after being out of the military, and like I didn't have a great understanding of what PTSD was. And so someone at the VA is explaining it to me. They're like, "Oh, well, it's like one instance that happens where it's maybe you saw someone die or injured or something like that. It's like one traumatic thing or something." And I remember thinking, I'm like, I can't like boil that down to like one thing, like, I mean, there's like a lot of those kinds of things. Yeah, another one they said was like maybe like where you thought you were going to die. It's like, well, it's a lot, like there's a lot of those, not necessarily one. And so I would say for that as well, is that I kind of like to categorize it as like 8 years of suffering. And so it's not like a single incident. It was just over a period of time. And really, it was longer than that, but I didn't have full awareness of it. Like I was trying to push a lot of it down. I wrote something about this.
And that might be where that bend in the road was. So it's these 8 years, right? Of like push it down, and then it couldn't push it down anymore. It's like the beach ball; they even push it under the water, and it's like it's coming up. That might be where that bend is.
I can remember one deployment. We were in quite a few pretty big firefights, I would say. And towards the end of that trip, I guess it's kind of one of those things where like, all the things that I would need to do to be able to prove myself, you know, I had done, and still felt like maybe felt more empty than before. Because it's like, okay, if you've proved yourself in combat, and I was submitted for awards and stuff, and these are all the things that would indicate of someone proving themselves. And actually thinking about it's almost like the worst thing for me. Like looking back on it, I would say in the moment it's like the worst thing for me, achieving so much, because then it was, yeah, feeling really empty in a way. I haven't, it's not something I put a whole lot of thought around until now, but I would say that was like a turning point, I felt like, for me. And I can even remember on my last deployment on active duty, it was after coming back from a mission, and me and some of my teammates are riding in the back of a truck. We're like driving back to the fire base, and we're talking about something along the lines of maybe how things change over time, with deployments and stuff. And I can't believe I vocalized it, but I remember saying something about how I just don't, like, I'd become apathetic in a way to a lot of things, like where I was doing it, and like I very much cared about my teammates and everything and took everything very serious, but it was like I was dragging myself to do it. And right, like a lot of this I don't know, apathy had come about, and it only manifested itself. Maybe that's part of like something I was trying to push down, but it only manifested itself in like very, very minor ways. And I would catch myself and, kind of in a way, like internally scold myself about it. And one of those ways, it can be minor, but it can be huge at the same thing. I mean, I think that's combat in general, is that something so minor can have such an enormous impact. And one of those is like after every mission, we'd always change out batteries with all of our optics or lasers, whatever, lights. We'd always change out batteries. And so you'd always have a fresh pair of batteries. You're going to get the maximum use out of those batteries. And there would be just stacks of batteries that were only used once, and maybe they weren't even fully used, just barely used batteries. But there were times where I was like, nah, I'm gonna change out my batteries. And really you could probably get away with that for a long time, not actually having to change out your batteries. But it was one of those things of like, this is something super small, but if your optic goes down because you didn't change out your batteries, or fails at a certain point during this mission ends up going way longer. Now you're out for like 2 weeks, which sometimes is rare, but sometimes we go out for a day and be gone for 2 weeks and, outside the wire for 2 weeks and not coming back to the fire base. And so it sounds super minor, but there were like, I noticed catching myself in those kinds of things, and which I don't feel good about. But yeah, I would say the achieving so much in so many ways, like really difficult schools that I went to, the very few SF got. I mean, all of this happened around the same time. Like I just finished like a really hard school to get into and pass at the time. I mean, these are active duty Green Berets there's a high attrition rate of those guys passing. And I just finished that school and was just in a place on the team of where I had a lot to provide in terms of experience and knowledge and like helping out with training so much and mission planning and then kind of had somewhat proven myself, in combat, and then coupled with these awards, then it's like that was kind of like the downward spiral in a way.
Do you think it has anything to do with here are these accolades or these things that you've achieved? It's all on the outside, right? But do you think you had proved it to yourself that you were enough?
No. Yeah, I'm certain, because at that point I started seeking other ways to prove myself. And yeah, there's another special operations unit that I had applied for and went through the screening and all that. And I was totally honest with everything. My team sergeant even told me, he's like, look, be as honest as possible with all this stuff because they're going to find out either way. And I was like, okay. So I was very honest in everything, in the screening and everything that they asked me and the interviews and all that stuff. And when it came back, they told me two things. That I was too young, which I was, because I was probably 24 or 5 at the time, probably 25, which was really young.
Yes.
But at that point, I'd already had 3 deployments on a team. Felt like, I had done a lot, but yeah, I was told I was too young, and the other thing was that I drank too much, and both of those things were true. And I was very, again, honest about everything that I put down, and like alcohol use, which was way. I don't want to say out of control in a way, because performance-wise, like I was doing well, work-wise and everything. Like I was probably seen at that time as like pretty high performing in a lot of the things that I did, on the team. But like outside of work, just drinking a tremendous amount. Like let's say if I had the weekend off, Friday night I would drink until probably like maybe around like 3 in the morning. And then Saturday, generally until like Saturday night, I would drink until like 5 in the morning on Sunday, and And the waking moments that I had on the weekend, I was drinking. And then probably the thing that kept me from, at that time, drinking during the week so much was, yeah, just, I mean, you have to be at work early and like working out kind of thing. And so it was probably the biggest thing keeping me from doing that. But yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about the batteries and the
Huh?
not changing the batteries. I want to just explore a little bit more on the significance, and maybe I think that there might be even more significance that is under the surface that you may be aware of what it means to not change out those batteries.
I don't know, but I like the first thing that comes to mind is that I'm uh like I'm failing my teammates, like I'm letting my teammates down. And it's kind of the worst thing that you can do.
And do you feel like that's something that you're noticing when looking back? Or was it something that was just at the edges of your consciousness every time?
I mean, looking back, I have more awareness on certain things, but like I mentioned, I think I was internally scolding myself, for the thought of I can just not change these out, or this is not that big of a deal. Like just even having those thoughts, like I was, yeah, 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 internally just being so hard on myself.
When you have good things happen to you, like a recognition or anything like that, do you have a tendency to go and begin to immediately do any self-critic, scolding, anything like that?
Yes, it was way worse before. So before, I would actually, like, anytime someone told me thank you, this didn't change until a few years ago, but I would totally play it off like, oh, well, it's no big deal. Anybody can do that or whatever. Like there would always be something, and they're like, no, no, like, I really appreciate it. And then I would I would like argue with them. And it hasn't been until like the last couple years that I like like I recognized that that was awkward for them, where they're just like, bro, I'm just trying to tell you thanks. And it's, and it's actually from someone else's example, me telling them thank you and them receiving that appreciation. They're thankful to be thanked. And yeah, a lot of that has shifted, but back then I would not accept a compliment. It's not easy for me now, but before I would just outright refuse it. I've gotten a lot better at it. But yeah, I would totally downplay it. I would, yeah, be very critical of myself for sure.
So one of the themes that's come up before, and I'm going to touch it gently here now, and that is, so there's the ability to give to others, to do the things that we've talked a little bit about, the doing and the earning of love.
Mm-hmm.
What about the idea of giving yourself love? Is it difficult to give yourself recognition?
Yeah, I'd say I've gone from impossible to like neutral, like if giving yourself love was on a 0 to 10, 10 being the max. Before I was at a -5. And then actually, I'm not giving myself enough credit. Is I would say I'm probably like maybe a 7, maybe even an 8, at times. But and the only reason I rank it a little bit lower is because I have to actively work at it. It takes effort. It's not an effortless 7 or 8.
Do you think any of the experiences that you had in the military reinforced that, where it was difficult to look at self?
Maybe, but outside of understanding your own weaknesses and strengthening those, and then understanding, which just kind of ties into the same thing, is that if you're not contributing to the team, in the example, if you have some kind of weakness and you're not doing anything to correct that, you're totally failing. But outside of that, I would say that's probably the only focus on self in a way. At least in my mind, everything is for the team. If you go to a school and you come back, you didn't go to that school just for your own individual benefit. You went to that school to learn a skill, and then now a part of your job is to teach some of that to the rest of the team. So not only are you providing the skill as an individual to the team, but you're also giving the skill to others for them to be able to use some aspect of it. They may not be able to use it to the same degree that you can. And so everything, there's nothing, I mean, there's evaluations that are done, evaluation reports and stuff like that. But again, it probably ties back to all the same stuff. What are you weak in? Are you getting better at it? But outside of that, I'd say there's next to no like self-focus in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so all the value then is then placed on the others and bringing and and helping others and not so much self.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it was different for other people, but that's how I view it or viewed it.
Does that feel like a comfortable place for you to be in with that way of framing things?
Yeah. Self-sacrifice. And there's a part of me that kind of misses this every now and again, is that I felt like self-sacrifice was something that I was great at. And man, and there's nothing more giving to someone else or the team than to self-sacrifice. If you are totally risking everything for the team, and it's seen as like great value too, but long term, there's nothing great that comes out of that for yourself, I feel like.
Do you feel like that takes a toll?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Eventually, you get totally burnt out. And I've had this in other areas of life where we're just so self-sacrificing. And I can even remember at one point having a meeting that I had to fly to. And I was just so giving of myself. Like, yeah, there was so much that I was doing throughout that year just by myself for others. And to the point to where, I mean, just working crazy hours. And really, like, there's no one to blame but myself on this. I was not going into an office or even working in person with another full-time employee. And a lot of this is in the, veteran nonprofit space. So it's so easy to give so much of yourself to it. But I had, yeah, been doing so much work throughout that year. And then I can't remember the order of this exactly, but I want to say that one of my grandparents died. I went from the funeral to right afterwards changing out of like my suit, putting on other clothes to go to this event for other people with it directly afterwards. And then right after that worked, this whole weekend by myself and, putting on these other events for veterans and stuff. And then that next morning, I'm like away from home, like one of my grandparents just died, and like there's no break in between any of this stuff. And the very next morning, I'm supposed to fly out to another state for a meeting. And I can remember thinking, I just hope this plane crashes. I just want it to crash because I just given so much of myself and was fried. And yeah, to be at a point where you're just wishing, for yourself to die in a plane crash, like is crazy. And yeah, the only other situation I can think of something similar was like in selection, probably at some points where I'm just pushing myself so hard. I'm walking the woods all by myself, but just trying to like, and it's towards the end and you're just physically you're smoked, and you're just in, so much pain or whatever that you're like, I want my leg to break right now. Like, I hope my leg breaks, so, cause I'm not going to quit, but like my leg breaks, then it frees me of this, which is so crazy it's some of the thoughts that you have. Yeah. I compare it to a lot of endurance running, long distance running, where your mind and body for every single step that you take is telling you to stop. But you keep going. And so, it's probably like part of the like random thoughts that you have where it's like your mind and body is telling you to stop. And you're even, I'm hoping my leg breaks so that like I have no choice but to stop, but I'm going to keep going until then,
I'm thinking about it. I've got a couple of different thoughts here. So I've got a thought on, what is it that we put in our mind to keep going? I'm also thinking about agency. And is it that, do you have a sense of agency of where it's like, I'm going to keep going and going until I choose not to do it, or something has to happen to pull me out of it? That's crossing my mind. And I see that seemed to connect too with you because you were, it seemed like that brought on a thought. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's totally true. Even, yeah, leaving, yeah, active duty, like, or, leaving the team, like, I felt, yeah, I didn't want to leave the team. I mean, this whole bunch of different stories in itself, but, yeah, I didn't, even when it was brought on by something else for me to leave the team, even at one point I had orders to go somewhere else, like I was fighting them. Um, because looking back, like it was really immature not to accept those orders. And yeah, ultimately, yeah, this is a whole long story, but short version of it is like I even told my company sergeant major, he's like, look, you're going to SWEC, you're going to the schoolhouse, to train other guys who are coming through the Q course who are wanting to become Green Berets. And it makes sense that you want the most, people with the most relevant information to, people that have recently deployed and recently been on teams and like doing the job to pass that on to people who are trying to get to a team. And I didn't really see it that way. I saw it as like I would be leaving the team, and not so much me leaving the team as if I'm not going to be there for the team. And so, yeah, I even told like that sergeant major, he's like, look, like the only way out of this is if you sign a deck statement, which is you're declining your orders, which then bars you from promotion. It bars you from reenlistment. And so then you're out of the Army at a certain point. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll sign a deck statement. And, but I'm not going somewhere else. And I think he was just absolutely stunned that I said that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became the beginning of the end there. But he was very helpful for me because he was able to keep me on the team longer than I ever should have been. But he even told me, he's like, look, like there's only so long that I can protect you from this, because you have the most amount of team time in the company and you're going to have to go. And that's a normal thing. I mean, it's not like it was just a random thing that happened to me. That's like the normal progression of things. You spend a certain amount of time on a team, and then you go to the schoolhouse to train.
You were talking about the team time and being on there for it's a normal trajectory, and then he can only protect you for so long, and then there was the decision about that you were purposely not, this is really going to change the whole trajectory of everything.
Yeah, but I think, to your original question about like, or thought around, did something else almost have to happen to make me, change or, go in a different direction or whatever? Yeah, I'd say that is very true, but I'm not sure where that comes from, why. Probably part of it has to do with if I went against like a feeling that I had, it would be, yeah, again, it goes back to like, this would be hurting the team, or this would not be, yeah, there's probably even some like ego stuff wrapped around it. And I'm trying to, yeah, caring about what other people think. Yeah, probably had an aspect to do with it. Because if it's, oh, well, if you're leaving the team for any reason other than you got injured or you were killed, or it sounds like extreme to say that, but then oh, you're a shitbag. And so there's probably some of that too. And although I wasn't thinking about this in selection, this may have been at the back of my mind, is that if I don't pass this, what's worse is having to tell somebody for the rest of my life that I didn't make it. But I knew I wasn't going to quit, because that's even worse, having to say that, like, yeah, I quit. Yeah. And so
Would
I
you
guess
say that?
I guess that's part of it, is that like it's worse to say you quit versus, yeah, because you got to tell that story for the rest of your life. So you quit something, you quit the team, or you quit at selection, and maybe that was part of it. And so unless something totally drastic happened, like the plane crashed on the way, versus like if it's like, hey, I just need some time. I got stuff going on in my life right now. I need a break. Like I need some time. well, you quit is what I associated it with.
You know, I'm going to ask you a hard question here with evaluations of others. So people evaluating you either for the good or for the bad. The evaluation of others or validation or invalidation. Do you think back then that is what you used to define yourself? It wasn't what Chris thought, it's what they thought, and that would be internalized.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. In some ways, nowadays, I don't care so much about what generally, well, I mean, I know this to be true. And I think this is true with most everybody is that, well, no, that's not true. I was going to say that, like, yeah, I'm having a lot of different thoughts here. What is true is that, there's probably a very small number of people in reality that, no matter what we do, they would still care for us. And like, those are the people that like matter the most. I don't know. I have a lot of different thoughts around this. Like, I don't have like them quite formed. Dang. But
Instead of going down each one or like trying to get deep into one, what if you were to list the different thoughts? Then we pick one to talk about. Like one is people who matter, what they think, right? Or people who matter in our lives.
Yeah.
What are all these different thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just trying to like have some exactness around this and I don't think I'm going to be able to recall all of this. But if I pick an aspect, dang it. Yeah, I don't know. If I pick an aspect to talk about, like, aspect then very much cared about what people thought. Unfortunately, I still carry some of that today. There's an aspect where I don't, but also still do. It's drastically different from before, where I very much cared about what other people thought of me. It's very different, but there's still, unfortunately, I still carry some of that.
When you say that out loud, how does that feel in your body? What are you noticing?
It's disappointing.
And then what does your mind do when you are saying that to yourself?
Saying that it's disappointing?
Would you say that you're judging yourself, diminishing or anything?
Diminishing, yes. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I guess saying it out loud is like, it's an area that like I've worked on. I work on this like almost daily, because, yeah, I don't know.
How does that feel for me to just call it out and name it like
Good.
trying to get a reaction out of you? Good. That's good. Why does it feel good?
Because it's like, like I would even compare this to my first counseling that my first team sergeant did when I got to the team. I'd been on the team for not very long, but I still I wish I had this. It's not necessarily a negative counseling statement. It's just like, hey, I'm meeting with you and I'm going to be very honest about the things that you suck at and what you really should be good at right now that you are not, and what I expect out of you and all those kinds of things. It was so good, but it was really painful to hear some of those things, but also great, just like now naming some of these things maybe you wish were better, but it's like, okay, if I know what's broken, I can fix it. I can work on it. And so the more of these things that I bring into my awareness of, okay, that's not where I want it. Okay, well then I know I can do something about it. So
Yeah.
So in a strange way, it's good.
It is good. I think what you're talking about is when there's something that we don't like about ourselves, or maybe we're even hiding, and then it's right there in the light, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, well, now it's out in the light, and then all of a sudden its power is diminished. And then you see, oh, well, I'm not even being judged for this. Like, he's like, here's some things to do, and you're like, oh, gosh, he knows. Okay, then I'll work on it. It wasn't like you're out of here. Like, it's just like, here you go, and especially if it's something where the validation from others and things, so you want to hear like the best things possible, and then you hear the other parts of it too, and then it's like, okay, that wasn't that big a deal. They didn't really have that much of a reaction, so maybe I don't need to have as much of a reaction about this same thought or situation.
Yeah, I think it needs to be. I'm not sure if this is what you're saying, but in terms of someone else's reaction, I think sometimes it probably shouldn't matter, Like if someone has this reaction of you suck or whatever, like they're angry with you, or I pro I think I care about those things too much, you know, versus somebody has less of a reaction. Um, I think that, well, even when I came back from Mexico, and Becca had told a few people that, probably like I could picture in an excited way of, hey, he went and did this thing and he's so much better. And it's been a huge change in his life and our lives. And then the question that people asked was, well, why did he go do that? He doesn't need that. It was a compartmentalized suffering. Like I don't want to say that like I had a lot of people fooled, but I don't think anyone had any idea. Actually, I heard comments a lot. Even a very good friend of mine he's like, wow, I didn't even know that you had that going on, but I'm just happy for you that you're better. I even had family members say something similar. So my mom knew something was up, but she's pretty tuned into what other people are feeling or that kind of thing. But what did you ask?
So you hear that, and people are like, I didn't know. Like, I'm glad you're doing better. What do you think about that when you hear that? The compartmentalizing. Like, how do you.
Well, the only problem I have with it is the downside of telling people how great you are is you have to tell them how up you were. And yeah, I guess there's just some embarrassment associated
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah. It's.
If I
So,
can add one more thing too,
please.
is that I think there's some people that put me pretty high on a pedestal because they've only seen that one side. And then, actually, I'll give you a great example of this. As I was cautiously beginning to tell people, maybe I've told like 7 or 8 people about going down to Mexico, and it's gone way better than I expected. They weren't judgmental of it or anything. And then one of my old professors called me to we kept in touch, and I think he sees me or has seen me as like a hero. He read a lot of my stuff that I wrote and just thought like, man, what a a superhero. And but when he called me and I'm, oh, okay, all this has gone well, telling people about Mexico, like I'll tell him. It was as if I had shattered this idea that I'm actually human. Or maybe that's the idea that I gave him, but I shattered this idea of that I was flawless and I was just so, and he put a lot of judgment on it and like didn't reach out anymore for a long period of time. Um, and I think part of it was the judgment piece on it, the psychedelics aspect of it. And then another part was just like, whoa, this guy that I thought was just, yeah, a superhero, is not. And so that's kind of, I have to, I think for some people, like seeing those Facebook comments, I was just like, oh, it's like, I subscribed. It's like, oh, like some of those people, I'm like, you're not going to get value out of this. I know what your beliefs are and things like that. And this is going to go against those. And then some of them, I'm like, they see me as, they see they see just the shiny parts of myself. Yeah, but to tell the story has to like be the whole part.
It has to be the whole part because it's the parts that have been made new. And those are what are shiny. But there's all the parts are there. It's not just here I am, a brand new clean penny. There's all the different things that bring in you know, that experience and the beauty within that. And that word shattered is a strong word. I shattered the image. You feel a responsibility to within that superhero image.
I do because it is going to make someone feel a certain way. And although I shouldn't, I feel like I take some responsibility for that. But realistically, you can't expect anybody to walk around with like hey, I'm going to expose everything, all of the good and bad that is me. It's
Yeah.
unrealistic.
Yeah. And that would, I think, be another example of self-sacrificing before, beyond the like trying to get the leg to break again. Like, that'd be too much, too far.
Yeah.
I think when you say embarrassed, it makes me think about the idea of the mask that's on, and how much of the mask we let slip down. And then when people see, like, oh, there was a mask? I didn't know that you had one on. And then it's like, okay, maybe I'll just put it back up. Or, there's all these different thoughts with that.
Yeah. That's exactly how I imagine it.
And a mask allows us, if we put a mask on, we can go out in these different things and be whatever we need someone wants us to be, because we can just throw the mask on and take the mask, wherever we need to go, and we don't have to open ourselves up to different things. The mask can hide, but sometimes when we hide things, that makes it grow.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like the strong superhero, all this type of thing, that individual wouldn't have any of these difficulties?
Like with myself, or just the idea of in general?
For yourself. Sometimes there can be a thing where it's like how we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes that's who we are, and that we like strive to be it. And then it's much harder to then also notice the other parts of ourselves.
Yeah. Then I wanted to be what would, as I've mentioned before, would be worthy of love. If what that is somebody who does X, then I'm going to do X. And if that is somebody that doesn't do Y, then I'm not going to do Y. Yeah. Yeah. Just trying to carry as little of that as possible now.
Yeah. Because like that image that was shattered, like you're like, oh, well, that's who he loved. That was that image, and it's gone. And that's what all of this is. The embarrassment, all of these different feelings are very normal. And it is because there is that desire to be loved. And perhaps that person who's loved doesn't have these struggles and is able to, or that person who's loved has struggles and puts it all out there. Both are not real, because nobody is perfect and nobody does all of these different things. And so then we can be like, ooh, I don't do that one thing, and that's what love is. If I have to do all those things. I have to check all the boxes.
Yeah.
So Chris, when I say these things and you say like, I feel embarrassed, I want you to know one thing, so embarrassment, and naming it's fine in a human emotion. It is. This is embarrassment. And then there's also choice points too, right? Like, I hope I didn't make you think that the post-traumatic stress defines any of this, because that was not my intention.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't feel that.
These themes are not because I'm a genius. It's just they're well researched, but I'm hearing some of the things that are kind of pulling along in this direction, and probably also that connect over to the psychedelics piece as well. It's all these different things. And I was more thinking like book wise, and like how I would organize this and help you maximize the time. But you always have the choice as well to pick and choose what you put in.
Yeah. I like what... Yeah, I like the thought that I had earlier, which is that... Well, let me back up. There's not many enemies that I have. I would say, like, aside from the crazy person who hates everybody, that is like an enemy of everyone. Like, I don't have many. And I think that's a fail, because what it means is that it's not like I think you're less true of yourself if, there's not, if you haven't pissed off a lot of people, like, you're not being true to yourself, I think. And so I think I need to piss some more people off. I was even thinking about like this lady with that sent me that message on Instagram. She is so nice and she is so kind, and I'm very thankful for her. Like, when I was thinking about responding to her, it was like, I can't piss her off. But then I was kind of like, well, you know what? It goes back to this, sometimes a message has to sting for someone for it to sink in. And, I don't want to hurt anybody, kind of thing. But if it were to make her better in the process, it pissed her off, then I'm okay with that. But all of this goes back to, I started to say this earlier, a minute ago. It goes back to is that, like, this is the reality. And I want to keep this in front of my mind because this makes this easier for me. This is a temporary experience. So whatever, this is not my forever. Yet this whole experience on earth is just temporary. And so if I piss some people off along the way, or if I have this temporary experience of being embarrassed about it, then it's okay because it's all temporary.
Yes. I think what you're getting at, Chris, is that you can, I don't want to say we can control our own feelings because I don't like that phrasing. I don't like saying we're responsible for our own feelings. I don't like that phrasing. I'm just saying we are our own selves and we have our own feelings and all of these things and our own actions. Actions is the word I want. Other people, but we're not responsible for other people's actions or their feelings. So by holding yourself back because you don't want this person to feel this, or maybe, or will they not do this or that? Those are very normal things. There's nothing wrong with those thoughts. But knowing like, hey, you know what I can do is I can take the action to be fully authentic and show up as myself. And I can choose to be aware that I have a feeling of I might influence this person one way or the other, but I'm going to choose to just note that, okay, that feeling's here, and I'm still going to go forward and show up as I want to authentically and not be defined by what other people's desires are of me.
Yeah, being authentic was super important to me. Well, I think people can pick up on it for the most part. And then I don't want someone else's less than authentic self to be presented to me. So maybe in a way I owe it to them to, be that same way.
Yeah, and that's love, right?
Yeah.
The idea of, what is it? Do unto others as others would undo to you. So you want to show up authentically and you want it the same back.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you got a lot of value out of it, or if you know someone who could get some value out of these, please share this channel with them. Also, if you subscribe and leave comments, I try and respond to every single one of them. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you.